A glass of water that changed everything. The cabin of Flight 217 buzzed with the low hum of conversation as passengers settled into their seats. The faint scent of fresh-brewed coffee lingered in the air, mingling with the crisp chill from the air conditioning vents. In first class, everything was as one might expect, orderly, polished, and quiet. The travelers there were accustomed to comfort, their conversations soft, and their demands subtle but constant. Among them sat Gabriel Cole. Gabriel took his seat at the window in 3A, his movements measured, his hands resting lightly on the armrest. He was dressed simply, a dark charcoal shirt buttoned up neatly, a thin silver chain just visible beneath his collar. It wasn't the kind of outfit that demanded attention, nor did Gabriel seem to want it. His presence was calm, unassuming. Yet there was a quiet strength about him, something you couldn't quite name, but couldn't miss. He glanced out the window briefly, then leaned back in his seat. His expression was unreadable as he observed the flight attendants moving methodically up and down the aisle. Gabriel had been on many flights before, but this one, he knew, was going to be different. A few rows ahead, Charlotte readjusted her uniform jacket. She smoothed her auburn hair into a perfect bun, checking her reflection in the polished chrome near the galley door. Charlotte was good at her job. In fact, she prided herself on being better than good. Years of experience had honed her instincts. She could read a cabin in moments, identify the high-profile travelers, the regular business flyers, and the celebrities who expected perfection. And then there were the others, the ones who didn't fit. Her gaze flickered over Gabriel as she made her way down the aisle. For a fraction of a second, her expression shifted, disapproval, maybe even suspicion, but it disappeared just as quickly. She passed him without a second glance, offering warm smiles and light conversation to the other first-class passengers. Gabriel wasn't surprised. He had seen it before, more times than he cared to count. The doors closed with a soft but final click. The captain's voice soon filled the cabin with pre-departure instructions as the plane rolled toward the runway. Gabriel closed his eyes for a moment, his head leaning back against the seat. He hadn't slept much the night before, and exhaustion hung heavy on his body. But he stayed composed, quiet. When the plane reached cruising altitude, the flight attendants began their service. The clinking of glasses and muted laughter filled the cabin as trays of sparkling water, fine wines, and freshly squeezed juices made their way down the aisle. Charlotte approached Gabriel's row. She stopped briefly, pouring a glass of mineral water for the woman seated next to him, an elegant, older lady named Evelyn Mercer. Evelyn accepted the glass with a nod and a polite smile. And then Gabriel spoke. His voice was calm, low. "May I have a glass of water, please?" Charlotte didn't meet his eyes. There was a pause, barely noticeable but deliberate. "We'll be serving drinks later," she replied, her tone clipped and efficient. Gabriel's gaze shifted, briefly, to the tray of untouched glasses on her cart. "You're serving them now," Charlotte sighed. Not heavily, but in that way meant to suggest irritation. "I'll come back." And just like that, she moved on. The cart rolled forward. Gabriel was left sitting there, his simple request ignored. No one seemed to notice. Or rather, they pretended not to. Evelyn glanced his way, her expression unreadable, then quickly turned back to her drink. Gabriel exhaled slowly, his fingers tapping lightly against the armrest. This wasn't new to him. He wasn't here to cause trouble. But there were some things he simply wouldn't let pass. Further back, one of the newer attendants, Emily Hart, had been watching. Her brow furrowed slightly as she noticed the interaction. Charlotte was known for her precision, her ability to command the cabin, but Emily couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. Gabriel, meanwhile, reached for his phone. He typed out a short message. Just a few words. Then he hit send. And he waited. The flight continued smoothly on the surface. Charlotte moved up and down the aisle, refilling glasses, chatting with passengers. Gabriel was left alone. Ignored. Emily continued to watch. She knew the rules. She knew when to speak up and when to stay silent. But this time, it was different. Charlotte wasn't just delaying service. She was making a statement. One that was unspoken, but obvious to anyone paying attention. A quiet buzz came from Gabriel's phone. He glanced at the screen. Noted. Stay seated. That was all it said. 2 words. No anger. No urgency. Gabriel set the phone down, folded his hands neatly over his lap, and waited. Charlotte had no idea. No idea that a glass of water was about to change everything. Charlotte returned to the galley, satisfied with herself. She hadn't caused a scene. She hadn't refused him anything outright. She had simply deferred. As far as she was concerned, the situation was handled. But the intercom crackled unexpectedly. "Ms. Reed, please report to the cockpit." Charlotte stiffened. That wasn't normal. She exchanged a quick look with Emily, who was replenishing a tray of drinks. "Watch the galley," Charlotte said briskly, then headed toward the front. As she passed Gabriel's seat, she didn't look at him, but he watched her. When she stepped inside the cockpit, the door closed behind her with a muted hiss. Captain Marcus Bell sat in his seat, his gaze steady on the controls. Beside him stood Thomas Green, the flight operations supervisor. His expression was unreadable. "Is there a problem?" Charlotte asked. Thomas spoke first. "We received a call from ground control. There's a concern regarding service in first class." Charlotte kept her tone professional. "I assured a passenger I would return with his drink shortly. I was following procedure." Captain Bell's jaw tightened. "Were you?" Charlotte straightened, trying to regain control. "Yes." Thomas let the silence hang for a moment. Then he asked, "Did you check the manifest before making that decision?" Charlotte faltered. She hadn't. And they knew it. Thomas continued, his voice cold but controlled. "The man in 3A, Gabriel Cole, is not just any passenger. His family owns this airline." Charlotte's stomach dropped. Gabriel Cole. She'd heard the name. Everyone had. His father was the founder. His sister the current CEO. And Gabriel, though rarely seen, was known as the quiet force behind many of the company's most important decisions. Thomas stepped closer. "You're going to return to the cabin. You're going to apologize. And you're going to serve him whatever he asks for. Now." Charlotte swallowed hard. She nodded. And then she turned to leave. The walk back down the aisle felt longer than any walk she'd made in her career. Gabriel was still there. Still seated. Still composed. She stopped at his row. "Mr." She corrected herself. "Mr. Cole, I wanted to apologize for the delay in service." Gabriel said nothing. He simply looked at her. Charlotte pushed on. "It was never my intention to make you feel unwelcome." He tilted his head, his gaze steady. "Is that so?" There was no malice in his voice. But there was weight. Charlotte nodded. "Yes." Gabriel leaned back. "And what exactly did you misunderstand?" Around them, a hush had fallen over the cabin. Evelyn was watching. Emily stood at the galley entrance, tense. Other passengers had begun paying attention. Charlotte's throat tightened. I assumed you could wait." Gabriel's gaze didn't waver. "Did you ask anyone else to wait?" "No." He let the silence stretch. Then, quietly, he said, "At least you're honest now." Charlotte placed a glass of water on his tray table with hands that trembled more than she liked. Gabriel took it, sipped it, and said nothing more. But the damage was done. The flight continued, but the atmosphere had changed. Charlotte retreated to the galley. Emily didn't say anything at first, but when she did, it was quiet. "You should have just given him the water." Charlotte ignored her. She went through the motions of service, but her focus was shot. And then the in-flight phone rang. Thomas again. "When we land," he said, "Eleanor Cole will be waiting at the gate. She wants a word." Charlotte's heart stopped. Eleanor Cole, CEO of Orion Air. She hung up slowly, numb. The rest of the flight passed in a blur. Gabriel remained calm, silent, but he had sent a message and it had been heard. When they landed, Eleanor Cole was there. She was composed, immaculate, and terrifying in her quiet intensity. She didn't make a scene. She simply asked Charlotte to step aside. The conversation was short. Charlotte was suspended. Effective immediately. Pending a review by the executive board. "You will submit an incident report," Eleanor said, in your own words. "No edits. No filters." Charlotte nodded, feeling the weight of everything she had built slipping away. As she sat in the executive lounge afterward, staring at the blank report on her tablet, she finally understood. This wasn't just about a glass of water. It was about judgment. About the kind of person she had become. And the kind of person she wanted to be. She wrote the truth. Every word. And when she finished, she submitted it. And then, to her surprise, Gabriel appeared. "You submitted your report," he said quietly. "I did." "And why did you tell the truth?" She met his gaze. "Because I didn't want to lie anymore." Gabriel studied her for a long moment. Then he nodded. "If you're given another chance," he said, "earn it." And then he left. For weeks later, Charlotte Reed walked back into the headquarters of Orion Air. She wasn't sure what the future held, but for the first time, she was ready to find out.